Mia Reynolds pauses at the base of the stone steps and tilts her face toward the building as if she might find an answer written into the glass. The clinic does not have a name on the front. No sign, no welcoming logo, just polished black doors, a discreet camera above the entrance, and a man in a dark suit standing a little too still to be a doorman. This place is not for regular people. It is for men who pay for silence and safety, men who do not want their names written down or their lives examined too closely, men who solve problems quietly. She exhales through her nose and places one hand on her belly, feeling the familiar weight and tension there. 7 months, her body is tired in a way sleep no longer fixes. Her coat hangs wrong on her frame, stretched tight at the buttons, frayed at the cuffs. She tells herself the same thing she has been telling herself all morning. One appointment, one checkup, then she leaves, clean in, clean out, no mistakes. Inside, the air is warm and smells faintly of citrus and something expensive she cannot name. Marble floors reflect the light so brightly she feels exposed standing there. The receptionist looks up immediately, smile polite and practiced, eyes sharp. Mia gives her name and forces her shoulders back. Her voice is steady when she says it. Mia Reynolds. She has learned how to sound steady even when her heart is racing. The receptionist types, pauses for half a second too long, then nods and asks for insurance. Mia hands over the card and watches the woman's fingers move. She answers the questions automatically. Yes, no, everything is fine, no complications, no emergency contact. She does not mention the divorce, she does not mention the diner job or the studio apartment or the nights she lies awake counting tips in her head. She does not mention why she chose this clinic instead of a public hospital, because the truth is dangerous and here, truth has a price. When she sits down, she feels the room watching her, not openly, not rudely, just enough to make the skin on the back of her neck prickle. The men near the walls are not wearing uniforms, but they are not patients either. Their posture is wrong for waiting. Their eyes move too often. Security, she knows the type. She has worked around men like this before, learned how to move through their presence without drawing attention, learned how to make herself small without disappearing. She tells herself she is nobody now, just another pregnant woman waiting for an appointment. But the way one of them glances at her file as it passes from the receptionist to a nurse makes her stomach tighten. The way his gaze lingers on her name a second longer than necessary makes her pulse jump. She lowers her eyes and focuses on breathing. Proud, that is what she still is, even now, proud enough that she did not beg, proud enough that she walked away instead of staying where she would have been protected but owned. Terrified too. Terrified of being seen for what she is now, a woman who fell from a world of power into one that barely notices her unless it wants something. She shifts in the chair and feels the baby move, a slow roll then a sharp kick strong enough to steal her breath. Her hand flies to her belly without thinking. The movement grounds her in a way nothing else can. The fear softens, replaced by something fierce and hot in her chest. She leans forward slightly, bowing her head as if she is praying, and whispers so softly no one else can hear. I am here, I have you, no matter what. The clinic feels less quiet now. The hum of electricity behind the walls seems louder. The guards are still watching, pretending not to. Mia straightens and lifts her chin. Whatever this place remembers about her, whatever name her file once carried, it does not get to decide her future. The baby kicks again, harder this time, and Mia smiles despite herself, a small, private smile. She presses her palm flat against her stomach and makes herself a promise she has never said out loud before. She will lie, she will hide, she will fight if she has to, but she will not lose this. No one is taking her child. Not this clinic, not the past, not the men who think silence can be bought. She sits back and waits for her name to be called, unaware that the door behind her is about to open, and that the life she has been holding together with sheer will is already beginning to crack. The glass doors slide open and the temperature in the lobby shifts, as if the building itself has inhaled a different kind of air, and Mia feels it before she sees him, that subtle pressure that used to settle over a room. Whenever Jonathan Blake entered the way, conversations softened and bodies straightened without anyone knowing why. She keeps her head down at first because instinct tells her to disappear, but instinct is too slow because his presence is already everywhere, filling the marble and glass with quiet. Authority. He is speaking into his phone voice, low, controlled, talking about a shipment that never arrived, and a man who made a very stupid decision. And there is no anger in his tone, only certainty, the kind that promises consequences without needing to raise its voice. Mia knows that voice too well. She heard it late at night in offices emptied of staff. When numbers turned into lives and choices became irreversible, she lifts her eyes without meaning to, and the sight of him hits like a memory she never allowed herself to finish. Tall, broad shoulders wrapped in a dark coat that probably hides a weapon the way other men hide wallets. His hair is cut sharp, his jaw harder than she remembers. And his eyes, those eyes that once tracked every movement she made without touching her, are colder now, more guarded until they are not, until they find her and stop. The world tilts just slightly, like the floor beneath her has shifted. And for a heartbeat, no one breathes, not the receptionist, not the guards, not Mia herself. Recognition moves across his face in layers, disbelief first, then relief, so sharp it almost hurts to see, then confusion as his gaze drops lower and lower, until it lands on her stomach. Time stretches thin. He forgets the phone in his hand, and it slips free, hitting the marble with a sound too loud in the quiet lobby, a sound that makes everyone look, but Jonathan does not. He is looking at her like she is something resurrected from a grave he never visited. Mia feels every inch of herself exposed, the coat, the curve, the undeniable truth she has carried alone for months, and he starts toward her, steps measured, but fast enough to signal intent, not rage, not yet, just a need that has been denied too long. He stops in front of her, close enough that she can smell his cologne, the same one she tried to forget and failed. Her name leaves his mouth like a wound reopening. Mia. And it is not the boss who says it, not the king of the syndicate, but the man who once whispered it into her hair when the world was smaller and safer around them. His eyes flick back to her belly and stay there. And when he speaks again, his voice is quieter, tighter. How far along? She swallows, because this is the moment where truth becomes dangerous. 7 months, the number hangs between them, heavy and loaded. He repeats it as if testing its weight. 7 months. Then the question comes, not loud, not cruel, but sharp enough to cut through her defenses. Is it mine? Every muscle in her body locks, because she knows this answer will change everything, and she does not know yet if it will save her or destroy her. She thinks of the nights she cried silently into a pillow, the first ultrasound, the fear, the resolve. She thinks of the baby kicking earlier, like a reminder that she is no longer alone. And she lifts her chin and meets his gaze. Yes, the word is small, but it lands like a detonation. She watches his control fracture, not break, but bend. Shock flashes first, then something dangerously close to joy before anger and pain crash in behind it. He looks like a man doing calculations with a heart that was never supposed to be involved. You ran, he says low. You vanished. Mia does not apologize. She does not explain. Not here, not now. The nurse calls her name, and the sound feels like a rope thrown across a cliff. She grabs it, standing too quickly, and Jonathan reaches out, stopping her with a touch that is not rough but not gentle either, a reminder of who he is and what he can do. We are not finished, he says, and the promise in his voice is not a threat, it is a certainty. Mia pulls free and follows the nurse, heart pounding, because she knows now that the clean exit she promised herself is gone. The past has found her, and it is standing in a silent clinic with eyes that have already claimed what she spent months protecting alone. The hallway feels longer than it should as Mia follows the nurse, and every step echoes too loudly in her ears, even though the floor is carpeted and soft behind her. Jonathan remains in the lobby, but she can feel him there, like gravity pulling at her spine, like eyes that never stopped watching even when she turned away. The nurse speaks gently, asking routine questions, but Mia barely hears them because her thoughts are racing faster than her feet. This was not supposed to happen, not today, not ever, she told herself. She had buried that life. She folded it away and locked it behind silence, but silence never stays buried when powerful men are involved. Inside the examination room, the lights are bright and unforgiving, the kind that show everything you try to hide. The nurse helps her onto the table and hands her a thin paper gown that feels like an insult against her skin. Mia changes, slowly breathing through the tightness in her chest. She hears voices outside, low, controlled, unmistakable, the sound of men who do not wait to be invited. Jonathan is speaking now, and even without hearing the words, she knows the tone, the one he uses when he is being polite, but preparing for war. The doctor enters and smiles professionally, but there is something different in his eyes, a flicker of recognition that makes Mia tense. He confirms her name again too carefully. and she answers because refusing would draw more attention. The gel is cold against her belly, and when the monitor flickers to life, the room fills with sound, the strong, steady heartbeat of her child. And for a moment, everything else disappears: fear, regret, the man outside the door, all of it fades into that rhythm that has kept her alive these past months. The doctor nods approvingly, saying the baby is strong, very strong, and Mia feels tears burn her eyes because this is the only thing she did right. Then the door opens without a knock and the temperature in the room drops. Jonathan steps inside, and the nurse stiffens instantly. The doctor pauses mid-sentence, and Mia knows, without being told, that Jonathan owns this space as surely as he owns the streets outside the city. Jonathan does not look at the doctor. He does not look at the screen. He looks only at Mia, at the way she lies there exposed and vulnerable and carrying something that belongs to him. She should tell him to leave, she should scream for privacy, but her voice stays locked behind her ribs, because part of her knew this would happen, that there would be no hiding once the truth surfaced. Jonathan speaks softly, asking if the baby is healthy. And the doctor answers quickly, respectfully, confirming what Mia already knows. Jonathan nods. Once then his gaze drops to the monitor and something shifts in his face, something almost reverent. The heartbeat fills the room again, louder now, and Mia watches his hands clench at his sides like he is holding himself back from reaching out. "How long have you known?" he asks quietly, and she answers honestly, "Since the test, since the first moment the world tilted, and never went back." He absorbs that in silence, then asks another question that lands heavier than the first: why she did not tell him, why she chose to disappear when she knew what kind of man he was, what kind of protection he could have given her. Mia turns her head away, because this is the question that hurts most. She tells him she did not want to be his weakness, she did not want to be owned by his fear or used by his enemies. She wanted one thing that was hers alone. Jonathan steps closer, lowering his voice so only she can hear, and says, "You already were my weakness, you just never knew it." The words steal the breath from her chest, because they are not an accusation, they are a confession, and that makes them far more dangerous. The doctor clears his throat, uncomfortable, and excuses himself, and the nurse follows, leaving the door ajar and Mia alone with the most powerful man she has ever known. Jonathan reaches out, then stops inches from her belly like he is asking permission without words. Mia watches the battle play across his face, control against instinct, dominance against awe. And finally he lets his hand hover without touching, and says they are not finished, that there are things she does not know, threats she has been protected from without realizing, and that walking out of this clinic alone is no longer an option. Mia feels fear coil in her stomach, but it is different now, sharper, clearer, mixed with anger and resolve. She meets his gaze and tells him she will not be dragged back into his world without a fight, and Jonathan does not smile, but something like pride flickers in his eyes, because he has just realized the woman he lost is gone, and the one standing before him is far more dangerous. The corridor outside the examination room feels narrower than before as Mia steps out, slowly adjusting her coat and bracing herself for the weight of the moment, and the weight of eyes that turn toward her instantly. Jonathan is already there, leaning against the wall as if he owns the space, as if he has always been meant to stand between her and every possible exit. His men are no longer pretending to be visitors, they stand at measured distances, silent, alert, their presence tightening the air around her like a net that has been cast without warning. Mia keeps her spine straight, refusing to let fear show, because fear is blood in the water, and she has learned that lesson the hard way. The nurse murmurs something about follow-up appointments and disappears quickly, leaving Mia alone with the man she never truly escaped. Jonathan does not speak at first. He studies her face, her posture, the way her hand keeps drifting back to her belly, as if checking that the world has not stolen it while she was not looking. The silence stretches heavy and deliberate, and it is worse than shouting, because it gives her time to remember everything: the nights she worked late beside him, the way he used to watch her solve problems faster than anyone else, the way power hummed around him like a living thing, and now that power is focused entirely on her. "We need to talk," he says finally, voice low, controlled, not asking, not demanding, stating a fact. Mia meets his gaze and answers with a calm she does not fully feel. "Not here, not now." Jonathan tilts his head slightly, a gesture she recognizes as calculation, not concession. And then something subtle happens. One of the guards steps closer and murmurs into an earpiece, another nods. and the exit behind her is suddenly no longer clear. She realizes with a cold clarity that this was never going to end. Conversation in a hallway. Jonathan gestures toward a side corridor and says this way, and the words land with the weight of a command. She stops walking. And for a brief, dangerous moment, the world holds its breath. Mia thinks of running, of screaming, of drawing attention. But she knows attention here is controlled, curated, and paid, for she knows this clinic belongs to his world, not hers. And still she lifts her chin and says no. The word is quiet, but it cracks something in the air, because no one says that to Jonathan Blake anymore, not without consequences. For the first time since he walked in, his expression shifts not to anger but to something darker, surprise mixed with recognition, as if he is seeing her clearly for the first time in years. Then one of the guards makes a mistake. He addresses her not as Miss Reynolds, but by a name she has not heard spoken aloud since the night she left, a codename, a private identifier used only inside the syndicate walls. The sound of it slices through her chest, and every memory she buried surges back. Late-night briefings, hidden ledgers, encrypted phones, the way she used to protect Jonathan without ever being seen. Her breath catches, and Jonathan turns slowly toward the guard, his eyes hardening. That name is not spoken here, he says softly. And the guard pales, instantly stepping back. Mia understands. Then with sickening clarity, this clinic did not forget her. Someone flagged her file, someone remembered exactly who she was and what she once meant, and that means this was never just a coincidence. Jonathan steps closer, lowering his voice so only she can hear. You should not be here alone, he says. There are people watching you who are not mine. Mia laughs, once sharp and bitter. Because of course there are always people watching when power is involved, and she tells him she survived without him once, she can do it again. He studies her for a long moment and then says quietly, you survived because you were invisible, and now you are not. His gaze drops to her belly and lingers, and when the baby moves again, strong and undeniable, Mia places her hand there instinctively and leans down, whispering words only she can hear, a promise, a vow. She will not be taken, she will not be silenced. She will not let anyone turn her child into leverage. Jonathan watches that moment, something unreadable flickering across his face. And for the first time his voice softens, not with weakness, but with something like reverence. Then you should understand this, he says. No one who knows what you carry will let you walk away unguarded. Mia straightens, heart pounding, because she knows he is right, and that truth terrifies her more than any threat, because it means the fight she thought was over is only just beginning. Mia is led back into the examination room again, not because the appointment requires it, but because Jonathan says quietly that they are not finished, and the nurse obeys without meeting Mia's eyes. The door closes, and the sound is too final, too deliberate, like something has been sealed behind them. The lights hum softly, and the room feels smaller, now crowded with truths that have nowhere left to hide. The doctor returns with a tablet in his hand, and his professional smile is tighter than before, careful, like a mask that has been worn too long. He begins speaking about measurements and heart rate, but Mia notices how he avoids Jonathan's gaze, how his fingers tremble just slightly as he scrolls through her file. The baby's heartbeat fills the room again, strong and steady, and Mia clings to the sound, because it is the only thing that has not changed. It has been with her through hunger and fear and loneliness. It has been her anchor when everything else slipped away. Jonathan stands closer, now not touching, but near enough that his presence is impossible to ignore. And when the doctor pauses, Jonathan speaks, asking a simple question about her visits, how long she has been coming here, and how often, and the doctor answers too quickly, giving dates and times that Mia never shared out loud, and that is when she feels it, the cold realization sliding into place like a blade. Someone has been watching her long before today. The doctor clears his throat and says there is something else he needs to mention, his voice lower now, as if the walls themselves are listening. He says her file has been flagged not for medical reasons, but administrative ones, a security notation tied to clinic protocol for high-risk cases. Jonathan's jaw tightens at the phrase high risk, and Mia feels her stomach twist, because she knows that kind of language. It is the language of power, not health. Jonathan asks who flagged it, and the doctor hesitates just long enough to answer without saying a name. He says it came from above, and Mia almost laughs, because above is always where the worst decisions are made. The doctor continues, explaining that the clinic maintains a silent registry for certain families' bloodlines tied to long-standing agreements, and that pregnancies connected to those names trigger additional monitoring. Mia stops breathing, because she understands what he is saying even before Jonathan does. She looks at him and sees the moment his mind catches up the flash of anger, the cold calculation, and something far more dangerous dawning beneath it. He asks which bloodline, and the doctor finally says Blake. The name lands heavy in the room, and the baby kicks hard at the same moment, as if responding to it, and Mia grips the edge of the table, whispering under her breath that no one gets to decide her child's fate. Jonathan turns to the doctor, and his voice is calm in a way that promises violence later. Not now. He asks how long the clinic has been reporting her visits. And the doctor admits it has been happening since her first appointment, that notifications were sent automatically to a private channel monitored by a party connected to the old council. Mia feels sick, because that means her secrecy was never real. It was an illusion someone allowed her to believe in while they gathered information and waited for the right moment. Jonathan orders the doctor to shut the registry down immediately, and the doctor says he cannot, not without authorization from the same people who set it up. And that is when Jonathan smiles, a thin, dangerous expression that does not reach his eyes, and says, "Then they have just declared war." The doctor leaves quickly after that, citing another patient, and the room is suddenly very quiet. Jonathan finally looks at Mia fully, not at her belly, not at the past, but at her eyes, and tells her the truth, that there has been a fracture inside his organization for months, that someone has been positioning, quietly testing loyalty, using old rules and bloodlines as leverage, and that a child carrying his name would be the ultimate pressure point. Mia feels anger rise sharp and fierce, because her baby is not symbol, not a tool, and she tells him that if he thinks for 1 second she will let her child become part of his power games, he is wrong. Jonathan does not argue. He nods once and tells her this is why she cannot leave alone, and why this time he will not make decisions for her without her consent. He tells her there are people who already know too much, and that today proved it. The baby moves again, strong and insistent, and Mia places her hand there, grounding herself. She leans forward, whispering a promise. She does not realize Jonathan hears that she will protect her child from everyone, even him, if she has to. Jonathan watches her with something like awe and says quietly that this is exactly why she scares his enemies, and why they will not stop now. Mia lifts her head, meeting his gaze, fear still there, but sharpened into resolve, because she understands finally that survival is no longer about hiding, it is about standing her ground, and chapter by chapter her quiet life has turned into something far more dangerous and far more powerful than she ever intended. Jonathan does not take Mia back through the lobby this time. Instead, he guides her through a narrow side passage that smells faintly of disinfectant and old stone, a route meant for people who do not wish to be seen. And that alone tells her how serious this has become. The clinic no longer feels neutral, it feels compromised, as if every wall has ears and every camera has already memorized her face. They emerge into a private garage, where a black car waits, engine running, the driver standing rigid with his hands clasped in front of him. Mia stops short, her instincts screaming that stepping into that vehicle changes everything, because once she does, there will be no pretending she is just a woman with an appointment. Jonathan watches her carefully, not rushing, not touching. He says this place is no longer safe. And for the first time she hears something unfamiliar in his voice, not command, not authority, but urgency edged with restraint. He tells her that the registry means her movements have been logged, her patterns studied, and that whoever set it up wanted to confirm something before making a move. Mia asks who, and Jonathan answers honestly that he does not know yet, but that it is someone close, someone who understands the old rules and is willing to use them. The words old rules tighten her chest, because she remembers whispers from years ago when she worked beside him, late nights, documents. She was never meant to read conversations that stopped when she entered the room. She had thought she left all that behind, but it has followed her here like a shadow that learned her shape. Inside the car, the world outside fades into tinted glass and controlled silence. The city moves past, but it feels distant, unreal. Jonathan gives an address to the driver, not his penthouse, not one of his offices, somewhere else, and that alone tells her this is not about comfort, this is about containment. Mia breaks the silence, asking if he knew about the registry before today, and he answers no, but admits he suspected someone was watching for bloodline leverage after several quiet inquiries. Surfaced over the past months, he says names were checked, funds traced, questions asked through intermediaries, all circling the same theme: legitimacy, succession, inheritance, words that should belong to history books, not her unborn child. Mia presses her hand to her belly, feeling movement steady, grounding. And she tells him plainly that she will not disappear again, she will not be hidden in a safe house while men decide her future. Jonathan listens without interruption, and when she finishes, he surprises her by agreeing. He says hiding her would confirm her value as leverage, and that visibility on her terms might be safer. The car stops beneath a modest building that looks unremarkable from the outside, but she recognizes the subtle signs: reinforced doors, discreet cameras, a place designed to vanish in plain sight. Inside they enter, a private dining room, warm light, soft walls, no windows. Jonathan gestures for her to sit and waits until she does before taking the opposite chair, and for a moment neither of them speaks, because this is the first time since the clinic that there are no witnesses, no guards, no pretense, just the two of them, and the truth pressing in. He tells her about the night he went to her last known address and found it burned. The official report said electrical fire, but nothing in his world happens by accident. He believed she was dead for weeks until a quiet contact hinted that the body was never recovered. That hope kept him searching. But without a trail, he had nothing, and someone made sure of that. Mia feels the weight of it settle over her, because that means the life she built in hiding was balanced on a lie allowed by someone else. She admits she left because she believed loving him would destroy them both, and because she did not want her child raised as a bargaining chip. Jonathan looks at her then, not as a boss, not as a king, but as a man confronting the cost of his world. He tells her he cannot undo what he is, but he can change how power touches her life. He offers terms, not orders: her own legal counsel, financial independence, authority over her movements, and one condition only: that she does not face this alone. Mia considers the offer, feeling fear and relief twist together, because independence inside his orbit is still dangerous, but isolation has proven worse. The baby kicks again, insistent, and Mia exhales slowly, realizing this is no longer about pride, it is about survival and strategy. She tells him she will consider staying close, but not controlled, and Jonathan nods, accepting the boundary without argument, because something has shifted between them, an understanding forged not by dominance but by necessity. And as the lights dim slightly and the city hums unseen beyond the walls, Mia knows this chapter ends not with escape, but with alignment, uneasy, fragile, and powerful enough to change the course of everything that comes next. The building Jonathan brings her to does not look like a fortress, and that is what makes it dangerous. It sits quietly among other structures, its entrance unmarked, its windows darkened just enough to be forgettable. Mia senses the intention immediately. This place is designed not to impress but to endure, and as they step inside she feels the subtle shift in air, the hum of controlled power that reminds her too much of the world she thought she escaped. Jonathan does not touch her as they move through the space. He walks beside her, not ahead, not behind, and that alone tells her he is trying something different. The room they enter is large but warm, furnished with restraint, not luxury, and she notices details most people would miss: exits, sight lines, the way sound is dampened by the walls. This is not a cage, she realizes it is a negotiation. Jonathan sits across from her, and for the first time since the clinic he does not speak immediately. He waits, and that silence is deliberate. He is giving her space to decide whether she will fill it or leave it. Mia takes a breath, feeling the weight of 7 months press against her ribs, and she tells him she will not live hidden, she will not be moved like an asset or guarded like contraband. She says the baby is not his shield or his crown, and if that is what he sees, then she will walk even if it costs her safety. Jonathan listens, his face unreadable, but his hands are open, resting on the table, palms visible, a gesture she remembers from old negotiations when he wanted to be believed. He tells her he does not want obedience, he wants clarity. He admits that his world is already moving around them, that rumors have begun, that silence has drawn attention, and that the longer she remains unclaimed in public, the more valuable she becomes to the wrong people. He tells her the truth, that power abhors uncertainty, and that her refusal to be defined has created it. Mia counters that certainty has never protected women like her, and that she learned the hard way what happens when men decide for you. She speaks of the divorce, without naming it, of the way she lost everything, because she trusted the wrong structure. The wrong promised Jonathan does not interrupt. When she finishes, he surprises her by acknowledging it. He says the old order would have swallowed her whole and called it protection, and that is exactly why it must change. He offers her conditions not as favors but as terms. Her own accounts beyond his reach, legal counsel of her choosing public acknowledgement without spectacle, and the right to walk away if he breaks these rules. Mia studies him searching for deception, but what she finds instead is restraint tightly held like a blade kept sheathed on purpose. Then the interruption comes, soft but chilling, a message delivered quietly to Jonathan, phone held low, eyes flicking to Mia before looking away. Jonathan reads, and the room tightens around them. He tells her someone attempted to access the clinic registry again after they left, and that means the watcher knows they moved her. Someone is accelerating their timeline. Mia feels fear spike sharp and immediate, but beneath it something else ignites resolve, anger, clarity. She tells Jonathan she will not be hidden, but she will not be reckless either. She suggests something unexpected: visibility on her terms, controlled appearances, places where watchers can see her alive, healthy, and unafraid. Jonathan considers this, and for the first time she sees approval not as possession, but as respect. He tells her that strategy might save her because it forces enemies into the open. The baby shifts again, strong and demanding, and Mia places her hand there, grounding herself. She says one more thing: if he wants her cooperation, he must give her information, not fragments, not filtered truths. Jonathan agrees, and tells her there is a fracture in his organization, a quiet one, someone invoking bloodline law to challenge his authority, and that her pregnancy has become proof for both sides. Proof he is vulnerable, proof he is legitimate, proof that can crown or destroy him depending on who controls the narrative. Mia absorbs this with cold focus and says then the narrative will be hers, not theirs. Jonathan leans back, watching her like he is seeing her fully for the first time, not the assistant, not the woman who left, but a strategist shaped by survival. He says quietly that this is why she scares them, and Mia realizes then that the fight is no longer about escape or safety. It is about standing visible and unbroken in a world that only understands strength. And as Chapter 7 closes, the alliance between them shifts from fragile necessity into something sharper, a shared front built not on dominance, but on mutual refusal to lose what matters most. Night settles over the city with a deceptive calm, and Mia feels it pressing against the windows of the safe building like a held breath waiting to be released. The decision to remain visible begins immediately, not tomorrow, not after rest. Jonathan orders movement with quiet precision, calls made without raising his voice, doors opening where none seem to exist, stylists, doctors, security all arriving in staggered silence, as if the building itself is summoning them. Mia watches it unfold, realizing that power does not shout, it orchestrates, and while part of her recoils, another part sharpens, because this is the world she once navigated from the shadows. She is dressed carefully, nothing extravagant, nothing weak, a soft coat structured enough to signal control. And as she studies herself in the mirror, she barely recognizes the woman looking back, her belly unmistakable, her posture unbowed. Jonathan stands behind her, not touching, giving her space, and tells her the plan: a controlled appearance at a charity event connected one of his legitimate fronts, a place already crawling with watchers where showing her openly will force the enemy to react instead of speculate. Mia agrees, knowing that fear thrives in darkness and exposure can be a weapon. The event is quiet on the surface, elegant, restrained, but beneath it hums with intent. Eyes track her the moment she enters, whispers ripple, not loud enough to be heard, but strong enough to be felt. Jonathan does not claim her with a hand or a word. He walks beside her, equal pace, equal presence. And that choice sends a message louder than any announcement. She feels the baby move, restless, as if sensing the tension, and she places her hand over the curve, grounding herself, reminding herself why she is here, not for spectacle, not for him, but to protect what grows inside her. Across the room she notices faces she recognizes from old meetings, men who once nodded politely while underestimating her, now watching with narrowed eyes. One woman approaches, offering congratulations, too quickly, smile too sharp, and Mia understands this is the first probe, the test to see if she will flinch. She answers calmly, meeting the gaze, holding it long enough to unsettle, and the woman retreats, satisfied with nothing except confirmation that Mia is not breaking. The escalation comes not in words, but in absence, a doctor from the clinic fails to arrive at the event despite being scheduled to appear. Jonathan receives the message, and his jaw tightens because absence in this world is never neutral. It is either flight or silencing. Shortly after a package is delivered, unannounced, wrapped, simply no card, no name. Security sweeps it, finds no explosives. But the weight of it is wrong. Jonathan opens it himself, revealing a small gold bracelet, delicate, engraved with the Blake crest, an heirloom symbol used only for acknowledged bloodlines. The room seems to tilt as Mia stares at it, because this is not a gift, it is a claim, a warning that someone knows not just that the child exists, but that they are already asserting ownership. Jonathan orders the room cleared quietly, and the bracelet locked away, but the damage is done. The enemy has moved from watching to declaring. Back inside the safe building, Jonathan calls an emergency council meeting, but only with those he trusts fully, and Mia listens from the edge as they argue strategy, voices controlled but sharp. Some urge immediate retaliation, others suggest secrecy. But Mia steps forward, interrupting them without apology. She says the bracelet proves the enemy wants legitimacy, not bloodshed, and that means they are afraid. She tells them fear makes people predictable, and predictable people make mistakes. Jonathan watches her speak, seeing the room shift as old assumptions crack. Because they are not hearing a protected woman, they are hearing a tactician, shaped by loss and necessity. When the meeting ends, Jonathan admits the truth. There is a rival faction preparing to invoke ancient syndicate law, a challenge based on bloodline succession, and the baby is central to it. Mia feels the weight of that settle, cold and heavy, but instead of retreating, she straightens and says then they will not hide, they will prepare, because the worst thing they can do now is disappear. As Chapter 8 closes, the city outside pulses, unaware that a child not yet born has already shifted the balance of power, and that the woman carrying her is no longer a secret to be erased, but a force pulling enemies into the light. The second heartbreak does not arrive with gunfire or shouting, it arrives folded neatly inside a document slid across the table like a courtesy. And Mia knows the moment she sees Jonathan's face change that something has gone wrong. In a way violence cannot easily fix. The room is quiet, too quiet, the kind of quiet that follows decisions already made. Jonathan does not speak at first. He simply pushes the folder toward her, and inside is a report stamped with official seals from people who sell truth for safety. It claims the child is not his. It lists another name, a man from Mia's past, someone she has not seen since before the divorce, someone weak enough to be used as a shadow father. The words blur for a moment as heat floods her chest. Because lies hurt differently when they wear authority, she looks up, expecting fury, expecting accusation. But Jonathan is very still, his hands flat on the table, his jaw tight, not with rage but restraint, and that terrifies her more than anger ever. She waits for the question that would tear them apart, the demand, the doubt, the threat, but it never comes. Instead, he says quietly, "This is false," and the certainty in his voice is not blind faith, it is choice. And that is when the second heartbreak lands, because she realizes how close she came to losing this fragile trust. She tells him the truth without embellishment, without defense. She says there was no one else, that the night she left was the last time she belonged to anyone, and that the lie was designed to break them, not inform him. Jonathan listens, eyes locked on hers, and then he does something no one expects, not his men, not his enemies, not even Mia. He tells her he will not force a test, not now, not under pressure, not as a display of ownership. He says the truth will come, but it will come clean. And on their terms. The room seems to exhale around them, because power in his world is measured by how quickly a man asserts control, and Jonathan has just refused that reflex. The pressure intensifies from their subtle and cruel, a call that does not connect, a friend who does not answer, a delayed message that feels intentional. Mia learns that Rachel, her closest remaining ally, was approached, offered protection money, and a story to repeat. She refused, but fear has already done its work. Jonathan moves security without spectacle, tightening circles without closing them. And when Mia confronts him asking if he is preparing to disappear with the baby, he tells her no, because running confirms guilt and silence feeds lies. Instead, he prepares a public reckoning, not loud, not violent, but undeniable, a council gathering disguised as a gala where legitimacy is currency, and everyone shows their face. Mia understands the risk, because showing herself means accepting every stare, every calculation, every whispered threat, but she agrees because hiding has already failed her, and this time she will not be erased. The night arrives heavy with intention, lights warm music, soft smiles sharp underneath. Jonathan walks beside her, not touching. And that absence is louder than any claim because it signals respect and equality. When the council assembles, Jonathan speaks not of power, but of truth. He presents evidence, not just tests, but timelines, access logs, clinic records. And the name of the insider who planted the lie, the traitor, is revealed not as an outsider, but as family, someone raised beside him, someone who believed bloodline law mattered more than consent. The room fractures as accusations fly, and then the final proof is shown, a secure confirmation establishing the child is his beyond doubt, and that the false report was engineered through bribery and threat. Mia feels the weight lift, and then slam back down as the traitor makes a desperate move, drawing a weapon aimed not at Jonathan, but at her, and the world narrows to a single breath. Jonathan steps in front of her without thinking, taking the blow meant to silence her. Sound is chaos, then containment, and when the threat is neutralized, Jonathan is on his knees, blood dark against his shirt, still conscious, still reaching for Mia, telling her to stay calm, to breathe, to protect the baby. And in that moment she understands love in this world is not safety or luxury, it is the willingness to bleed so someone else can choose freely. As sirens approach, and the room dissolves into aftermath, Mia holds his face and whispers that she will not disappear, that she will stand, that the lie failed because they chose trust over fear. And Chapter 9 closes with the knowledge that the enemy has been unmasked but not destroyed, and that the final confrontation will demand something even more dangerous than blood. It will demand a public burning of the old rules that kept men powerful and women silent. In the aftermath of Blood and Truth, as dawn breaks pale and uncertain over the city, Jonathan survives the wound. But survival is not victory, not yet. The old order does not collapse quietly. It gathers its remnants and waits for weakness. But weakness never comes because Mia does not retreat to a hospital room or hide behind security. She stands beside Jonathan when he wakes, her hand in his eyes meeting hers with something new there, not dominance, not command, but gratitude. The council reconvenes within days, not in secret, not behind velvet doors, but in the open hall of one of the oldest legitimate fronts, a place built to symbolize permanence and tradition. And this time Mia walks in openly, her belly unmistakable, her presence undeniable. Whispers ripple through the room, but no one dares silence her because the truth has already begun its work. Jonathan addresses them first, his voice steady despite the pain that still pulls at his movements. He speaks of betrayal, of bloodline law, of how power twisted into a weapon against its own future. Then he does something no Blake has ever done. He yields the floor to Mia. The room stills. Because women are not meant to speak here, not like this, not with authority. Mia steps forward, feeling every eye measure her, and she does not flinch. She tells them the story they tried to erase, the clinic, the registry, the fire, the months of watching and waiting. She tells them her child is not a symbol, not an heir to be claimed, but a life that will not be shaped by fear. She speaks calmly, clearly, and when she finishes there is no applause, only silence, heavy and irreversible. Then the final shocking truth is revealed, not shouted, not dramatized, but placed before them with quiet precision. Jonathan presents documents older than any of them, records sealed by the founders themselves, proving that the bloodline law was never absolute, that legitimacy was always meant to be chosen, not inherited, that the rule used to threaten him was altered decades ago by the very family now exposed as traitors. The room fractures again, but this time there is no denial because the proof is complete. And the weight of history turns against those who hid behind it. Jonathan declares the old rule burned, effective immediately, and when someone protests, he answers simply that power that cannot evolve deserves to fall. The traitor, captured but not broken, tries one last time to poison the moment, claiming the child binds Mia forever, that her name is already written into syndicate law. And Mia smiles, then not with softness, but with clarity, because she has learned how truth disarms fear. She reveals the final secret one even Jonathan did not know until recently uncovered by records buried beneath the clinic system, the night of their quiet union years ago when papers were signed to protect her access and authority. She was unknowingly bound into a dormant legal marriage clause, a failsafe designed to protect women like her in a world that consumed them. The contract never activated because no heir was declared, Until now, which means legally and irrevocably, Mia has never been an outsider. She was already part of the Blake line, by law, not possession, not secrecy, but consent. The room breaks not into chaos but into acceptance because the rules have shifted and the future has chosen its shape. Jonathan looks at her stunned, then smiles slowly, not as a king, but as a man who finally understands partnership. The traitor is removed, stripped of title and protection, and as the doors close behind him, the old world ends quietly, without gunfire, without spectacle. Weeks later, Mia stands on a balcony, overlooking the city, her hand on her belly, the baby moving strong and certain. Jonathan joins her, not looming, not leading, simply standing beside her. He asks if she is afraid, and she answers honestly, yes, but not alone. And that makes all the difference. The future is uncertain, dangerous, and unfinished, but it is theirs, built not on silence or fear, but on choice. And when Mia whispers to her child that she will never belong to anyone without consent, Jonathan places his hand over hers, and for the first time, power bows to something greater than itself, love chosen openly, and a legacy rewritten before it could repeat its worst mistakes.